Welcome back, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us for another explainer today. Because today, well, we are going on a really fascinating journey. We're going to decode the hidden mechanics of language. You know, we communicate every single day, right? But how often do we actually stop to look under the hood of the words we use? Or, maybe more importantly, the words used against us. In this explainer, we are unpacking critical discourse analysis, and we're specifically focusing on the groundbreaking framework developed by scholar Teun van Dijk. Let's get right into it.
Just think about your morning routine for a second. You probably scrolled through your news feed, maybe skimmed a few headlines, or listened to a press briefing in the background. But here's a massive paradigm shift for you. What if the words you absorbed in those moments don't just describe reality, but actually control it? That's what we're exploring today. Language isn't just some neutral conveyor belt for information. No, as we'll see, it is a hidden mechanism of power. The exact words chosen by writers, speakers, and leaders literally construct the world we live in.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the hidden power of words, then move into cognition and society, unpack something called the ideological square, compare macro versus micro text, and finally, wrap up with justice and legal discourse.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the hidden power of words, and looking at language as a social practice. So our absolute first crucial realization here is that words are never ever truly neutral. Enter Critical Discourse Analysis, or CDA. You can really think of this as a practical decoder ring. Basically, it's an interdisciplinary approach that investigates exactly how language constructs, maintains, and even challenges power relations and social inequalities. According to Teun van Dijk, discourse isn't just a linguistic phenomenon. It's an actual social practice, where ideologies are produced, reproduced, and legitimized. CDA helps us uncover those hidden, deeply normalized ideologies embedded in everyday texts and talk. It shows us, plain and simple, how discourse plays a central role in shaping public perceptions and our collective beliefs. Van Dijk contends that powerful groups often control public discourse through the institutions we trust the most. We're talking about the media, education systems, political organizations, and legal structures. To put that into perspective, think about a history textbook. How that book describes a specific historical event literally shapes an entire generation's common sense about the past. It's wild when you think about it. Through the discourse flowing out of these main channels, these groups shape public knowledge. So CDA aims to expose these mechanisms by identifying the specific linguistic strategies used to legitimize authority, or on the flip side, marginalize certain groups. Discourse is basically a double-edged sword. It reflects social inequalities, and it's the very tool used to sustain them.
Moving right along to Section 2, Cognition, Society, and Discourse, exploring the socio-cognitive approach.
Okay, now we're stepping into the invisible lens connecting these massive societal structures directly to the language we use. A really central concept in Van Dijk's framework is this socio-cognitive approach. He suggests that social structures influence discourse through our shared mental representations. That means our knowledge, our attitudes, ideologies, and beliefs. The biggest takeaway here? Your own social cognition is the target. These shared cognitive structures mediate that complex relationship between language and society. So when researchers sit down to analyze discourse, they aren't just staring at words on a page. They're looking at how social actors interpret and internalize those meanings. It's a perspective that lets us see exactly how ideological assumptions cross the line into being accepted as totally normal, everyday common sense.
Which brings us to Section 3, the ideological square and the construction of us versus them.
This concept is entirely about how socially shared belief systems organize our identities. The ideological square perfectly explains how discourse tends to emphasize the positive characteristics of the in-group, the us, while simultaneously highlighting the negative characteristics of the out-group, the them. Just think about a political debate for a second. We might call our own actions strategic, right? But we'll label the opponent's exact same actions as deceptive. We highlight our achievements and downplay our faults while doing the exact opposite for them. It's a powerful strategy that contributes massively to social polarization and maintaining group dominance. Researchers use CDA to track these precise discursive patterns to uncover underlying biases that, honestly, might otherwise go completely unnoticed.
Let's drill down in Section 4, Macro versus Micro Text, dissecting the actual mechanics.
When we actually sit down to analyze a text, Van Dijk proposes we look at two interacting levels. First up, macrostructures. These are the big picture elements, the overall themes, the main topics, the schematic organization. Then we have the microstructures. These are the tiny, gritty linguistic choices, things like specific vocabulary, syntax, semantic choices, and rhetorical devices. CDA researchers want to know how these two levels interact.
For example, let's look at agency assignments. Saying mistakes were made actively hides who actually made the error, right? It's completely passive. But saying the leadership made a mistake directly assigns blame. By looking at the interaction of the macro and the micro, we see how discourse conveys deep ideological meanings and literally shapes our social understanding of events.
Finally, Section 5, Justice and Legal Discourse. This is the ultimate payoff.
So it's time to ground all this abstract theory into a very high-stakes, real-world application. For legal discourse research, like, say, the linguistic analysis of rape judgments, Van Dijk's framework is incredibly useful. It allows scholars to explore exactly how judges linguistically construct victims and accused persons. The framework helps reveal whether legal discourse is reinforcing dominant social norms, gender stereotypes, or institutional power relations. Because the truth is, the law isn't just some set of purely objective rules. It is a discourse. And how that discourse is written can either challenge inequality or heavily reinforce it. Understanding this gives us a profound look into how justice itself is discursively produced.
Let's quickly step through exactly how our researcher decodes judicial reasoning. Step 1, they examine the lexical choices. Ask yourself what specific words are being used to describe the plaintiff versus the defendant. Step 2, they analyze evidential strategies and agency attribution. In a dense legal text, who is grammatically given the power of action and who is positioned passively? And Step 3, by combining these observations, they identify the embedded ideological assumptions. By following these exact steps, we uncover how justice is, quite literally, shaped by words. It is a rigorous, completely eye-opening process showing us how language can either maintain or challenge institutional power.
As we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with a question to carry with you. How is justice discursively produced in the texts, speeches, and rulings that you encounter every single day? Now that you have Van Dijk's decoder ring, now that you understand social cognition, the ideological square, and those tricky microlinguistic choices, you can start analyzing your own world. Try reading the news differently tomorrow. Listen to political speeches differently. Empower yourself by seeing the hidden power of words. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep analyzing, and I'll see you in the next one.